Noom. Yeah, you would have gone big. I'm going to get Bob on the jump, and then I'll get you. Hey skiers, I'm Jeff from skiessentials.com.
I'm Bob. How's it going?
Bob and I are here today to talk about the brand new 2022 DPS Pagoda 100 RP. Sounds like a mouthful, but they've kind of actually shortened the name of their skis by taking Whaler out.
And replacing Alchemist with Pagoda.
Yeah, so Pagoda's the new construction.
Yeah.
But I kind of like the way that DPS is like sort of simplifying the way that they're naming their skis, in the sense that there's not really like model names anymore. It's
Right.
just construction, waist width, and then shape.
Yeah.
It's like those three elements are making up the name of the ski. So this being Pagoda, it's a new Pagoda construction, which we'll get to. 100 underfoot, and then RP is the shaping concept. So we either have, or at least within the Pagoda series, we either have RP or C2,
Yeah.
which is something that we've had in the past, and we'll talk about that in a moment. So this ski is replacing the Whaler, the Alchemist Whaler 100 RP from last year and the year before. We did a review of that ski a couple of years ago. That's like the classic like yellow banana rockered ski that a lot of people kind of associate with DPS. This is the replacement for that ski, and it's very similar.
Yeah.
Overall, it's very similar. In fact, it's the same exact shape. They didn't change the shape of this ski at all. So essentially, the RP shaping concept means we get about 55% camber and the rest rocker. I say about because DPS says about, which is kind of nice. They do a little tilde, they're not exact. And then we also get a lot of early taper, and something that's consistent through all RP shaped skis is they all have a 15-meter turn radius.
Yep.
Which is pretty interesting. So all of that stuff stays the same. The change is Pagoda construction. So Pagoda was kind of introduced last year with Pagoda Piste. We talked about a lot of those skis in our ski test. If you probably have heard about those skis, a lot of those skis had the C2 shaping, and pretty much all of those skis, or I think all of them actually carry over to 2022 with no change. Now they've kind of expanded the Pagoda line into three sub-collections. So we get Pagoda, Pagoda Tour, and Pagoda Piste. So this being Pagoda, essentially what happened is the Alchemist construction had a aspen wood core that was sandwiched between two sheets of carbon. And DPS specifically uses like really nice carbon fiber, like aerospace grade vibration tuned carbon fiber. It's really nice stuff.
Yeah.
In this ski, the carbon stays the same. The difference is the wood core. And it's pretty cool. This is a unique construction for a wood core compared to most other companies. You know, we see a lot of companies laminating wood kind of along or aside each other.
Yeah.
Not sure if I'm describing that well. DPS is using three different types of wood here, and they're kind of stacking them. So in the middle of the ski, the bulk of the core is ash wood on top and paulownia wood on the bottom, with aspen kind of on the side to hold it together. I'll put a graphic up so you can see what I mean, because it's kind of hard to describe how it all works together, but pretty cool. So basically they took away a bunch of aspen and replaced it with ash and paulownia. And what's interesting is those three different types of wood have three very different densities. I don't know like that much about wood in general, so I did some research, and I'll if you want to see the actual stats, go over to the written article, and I'll put in like the pound per cubic feet density. But what I find really interesting about it is they've kept the weight the same.
Right.
So the 179, which I believe is what this is 1,805 grams, which is exactly what it was before. And it's just kind of interesting that they took out one style of wood, replaced it with 3, or added 2,
yeah.
but they've retained the same weight. And that's something that's important for these skis, is they've always been light,
Yeah.
which goes along with that, RP shaping, and they're very maneuverable. Now, by adding in that kind of, we'll call it sheet of denser wood, they've kind of strengthened the ski a little bit more, allowed for a little bit more vibration damping, which was something that was already impressive with the Alchemist skis. But I think it's even more impressive with these now that they've kind of taken that a step further. So always really interesting to see what DPS comes up with construction. They made in the United States. They have their own factory. They kind of think outside the box and do different things. So pretty cool to see what they've come up with.
And you could tell last year with the Pagoda Piste, they put that just extra layer of ash on top, and that was the big difference with that. And you could tell a big difference with that ash and that that more dense wood, that heavier wood.
Yeah, the ash definitely adds performance for sure.
Yeah, so it's I like how they've incorporated it into this and offset it with the Paulownia.
Right.
And kind of, and like you said, made it more damp, but didn't make it heavier. So that's kind of the workaround there, which...
Right. So, realistically, if you went back and watched the 2020 Whaler 100 RP review, you'd get kind of similar information.
Yeah.
But let's talk about performance anyway, because it does, the construction does change it a little bit. I don't necessarily think Groomers are the highlight of this ski, but they handle it pretty darn well. So, let's start with Groomers. 55% camber, 100 underfoot, 15-meter turn radius. What do you think, Bob?
Yeah, I think, as I wrote to you earlier, I'm not an RP skier on paper.
Sure.
I'm more of a C2 skier. I make longer turns. But I really like this ski and how it handles those shorter turns. The stiffness and combined with the width in that shape make it very energetic.
Yep.
And I find that to be true about the 100 Whaler as well. It's certain, this is the 184, so this is the one that I think we skied in most of the footage we have. And I had only skied the 179 in the older one, and this just added a whole new level of stability and energy and snap and pop coming out of the turn.
Yep.
Like you could get it with the 179, but the extra material really made a big difference for me on the Groomers. And what I think is fun is like how you play with the different turn styles on this ski.
Yeah.
So you can lock into that 15-meter kind of swooping, longer slalom style turn, and then you can play around and open it up, and then you can tighten it up and close it up.
Yeah.
And I would say it's not like terribly intuitive. Like you do have to take a couple of different runs on it, different terrain to really kind of assess where you want to be on this ski. But once you figure it out, you can definitely manipulate it however you want. The lightness takes care of that. It allows you to do that, which I really enjoy about it.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say that it's not like particularly intuitive, partly because it's just so different.
It's very different.
It takes a while to like kind of trust it, because you look down and you see all this taper and rocker, and even knowing that like it's 55% camber and the rest rocker, like it's hard to really like trust it when you're if you're really laying it over at a high edge angle. But even though it has a short effective edge on trail, it's pretty darn impressive. The grip of it.
Yep.
That's something that I think I probably talked about it too much with the Whaler 100 RP, how impressed I was with the carving performance, and the same carries over with this, and even takes it to a notch up in performance. I do still think it's like fair to say that there's kind of a speed limit. Like you don't want to go too fast. And what's interesting is it's not a limitation of the construction, which I think is usually what stops you from wanting to go super fast on a ski.
Yeah.
In this, it's more the limitation of the shape, in the sense that at high speeds, it just is a little twitchy. And by high speeds, I mean like really high speeds. Like if throwing it up against like a Bonafide or
Right.
a Mantra or something like that. Like it doesn't love 60 mile an hour super G turns, but that's not really its purpose at all.
No, and just to take on that and go to the shorter end of the spectrum. So if you're getting off a groomer and into the woods or in the bumps,
Totally.
like this is where it lights up.
Exactly.
Like you can really make this the shovels of these skis. I mean, you can get them around, no problem at all.
Exactly.
It's super maneuverable. And then it has that higher gear, like you said, not the top gear like a Bonafide, but still,
Yeah.
pretty good for most above average recreational skiers.
Totally.
But
Yeah.
I don't think a lot
Right.
of people have been on a mid 180 ski with a 15-meter turn radius at any width, much less 100 underfoot.
True.
It's a pretty rare combination of shape and size. So that I think that has a lot to do with the fact that you do need to kind of figure out where you want to be turning on this ski. But once you figure it out, it's all good. Just a really fun, high performance ski.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm glad you transitioned us into bumps and trees because, yeah, I think that's like the highlighting performance
Right.
of this ski is it realistically doesn't get much better for an East Coast tree ski.
Yeah.
Like, it is unbelievably easy to ski tight stow trees on this ski, like trees that are hard to ski. They are objectively challenging to ski. That some of the terrain at Stowe is very challenging.
Yeah.
And you get on a ski like this, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, this isn't really that hard at all.
No, I think it's like a high wiggle factor.
It's
Like you can
extremely
really-
high wiggle factor.
You can really get this thing.
and I give a lot of credit to that tail shape.
Yeah.
Like, that's a unique tail shape. How narrow it gets, like right in the end of the tail, like it's a abrupt taper back
Yeah.
there, and quite a bit of rocker too. So, yeah, it's pretty amazing.
It's no noodle though.
No.
It's like that 2 sheets of carbon
No,
make this thing about as stiff
Yeah.
as any ski we see with metal in it.
Yeah.
So you're not just gonna, it's not just gonna mush. You're gonna get the response out of it, which a lot of people really enjoy.
Yeah.
You don't just have to smush the tails and get and kind of manipulate the ski to get around. Like, it's gonna do a bulk of the work for you.
Yep.
Which, like you said, in these tight technical woods that we have here especially, is a big plus.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And we talked about this before we started recording. You still should be like a pretty active skier.
Yeah.
Somebody who's like making a lot of like quick kind of energetic movements. Like we kind of noted that DPS in their catalog used the word surfy.
Yeah.
And you and I were kind of talking like, I thought it's not really like super surfy. Because when I think of a ski that's really surfy, I think about like really not that much early taper. When you have that much early taper, that's when you start getting more reactive
Yeah.
feelings. I think about a ski with less early taper and a really long turn radius.
So, like, I've been on the Ben Chetler 100 the last month
Sure.
and a half of the year, and that's what I would consider a surfy 100 ski.
Yeah, because you can initiate that drifting turn and just keep going. Where these, like, you initiate that drifting turn and there's a little bit more catch and go back the other way, which I think most skiers prefer this feel. I just think it's like it's an interesting. It was interesting to Bob and I that they used the word surfy, and I can understand why they did, because it's so agile and so maneuverable. And I suppose there is a little element of surfiness to it, and mostly the sense of how easy it is to release the tail edge. But it's not like smear,
Yeah. I mean, we might think differently if we got it in a foot of fresh snow. We
True.
can't just call up a powder day for testing a ski. So we kind of do what we have. We did have a nice soft spring day.
Yeah.
And then, some other, I think when we tested in midwinter, it was it was cold, but we definitely got the softer snow towards the end of the year in the spring conditions. And I found that it was pretty grippy in those.
Yeah.
I would definitely like to see how it would do in a measurable amount of fresh
Yeah, and
snow.
I mean, I've skied this shape before in pretty deep snow, and it does really well.
Yeah.
I think when you bump up to the 112 in the same shape, it starts to feel surfier.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're still like, they're extremely agile, they're extremely maneuverable, they're really playful. I just don't know if surf is the right, or
Right.
surfy is the right adjective. But yeah, phenomenal skis, Bob. Anything you want to end with?
Not particularly. I had to look up what RP stood for. Do you know?
Gosh, I regrettably don't. I feel like I should.
So it stands for Resort Powder.
Sure.
And I just wanted to add that because I think it does make sense for, for this shape. That's kind of what they were always going for, is you're going to ride the lift and hopefully ski some fresh powder.
Yeah,
This is the shape that does a really good job for a lot of people with that, added taper and rocker.
Yeah.
And it just makes it easy to make those nice, easy, short, bouncy turns in fresh snow.
Yeah, it kind of like matches that skier's attitude.
Yeah.
I think really well.
Yeah.
I suppose the one thing that we haven't really said yet is that there's certainly no reason you couldn't put an Alpine touring binding on it.
Right.
Even though DPS has the Pagoda Tour line, which are lighter and more touring focused,
Yeah.
this to me is a great candidate for a Shift or a Duke PT or something like that, and you truly would get crossover resort and backcountry performance. Where like the Tour models, we've skied them on firm snow, and those have more limitations on firm snow. So this is, in my opinion, more well-rounded if you're looking for the total package.
And then I guess we'd be remiss if we didn't bring up the cost.
Sure,
And kind of, how do you feel this ski matches up either with other over $1,000 skis, or what justifies the cost on this ski specifically, do you think?
So I think its performance justifies its cost. I think that's one way to look at it, is like
Yeah.
you ski it, and I do feel like all those skis, when you're getting up into the $1,000 range, they should do something a little different
Yeah.
than everything else, and I think that's true about this. And then kind of the other way that I justify the price is U.S. manufacturing is more expensive.
Yeah.
That's kind of one way to think about it. And then also the carbon fiber, the actual carbon fiber
Yeah.
that they use is really expensive.
And like, as weird as it sounds, I can tell a difference between DPS carbon laminate
Yeah,
and
sure.
other carbon laminate.
Yeah. No, like
Whether it's a head core or a ripstick black, or
Right.
something like that. Like, you can tell that this stuff, it sounds different and it feels different on your feet.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the technical property is, but I know that it does have a physical difference when you're skiing it.
Yeah, all I know is that they have words in their catalog like aerospace and vibration tuned.
Yeah.
And I do know in talking to DPS that, yeah, it's not a cheap material to build
Yeah.
skis with, that's how I justify the price, and I think it's fair.
The other interesting thing I remember from talking with our rep about these is that he said that it doesn't break down either.
Right,
That the carbon behaves on day 1 as it will on day 500.
right.
So that you're not going to ski this thing out.
Right.
So that you might be able to get a couple more years out of it than you would kind of a traditional sandwich sidewall ski where the epoxy can break down.
Right.
This-
Fiberglass breaks down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the carbon on day 1 performs the same as day 500. So I thought that was pretty interesting as well.
The rest of the ski might look pretty bad after day 500.
Yeah. They got polyamide top sheets. I mean, it's a quality product.
Totally.
They definitely put, they put the effort and materials into it. So
I'm just saying, like, don't buy one. Then, like, we're not throwing out a 500-day
Right.
guarantee.
No.
But yeah, great ski.
Yep.
I think that pretty much covers it. As always, let us know if you have any questions. I think there are, like you brought up the ripsticks. I think that's an interesting comparison. Like reasonably similar shapes.
Yeah.
Both use carbon.
Yeah.
So yeah, if there's any other skis that people want to ask about and compare to this, I will say that this will almost definitely be in our 100 millimeter comparison when we get to that in the fall.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting. As DPS is always interesting to throw into those comparisons because it sticks out.
Yep. If everything were the same, it would just be boring.
Be pretty
nice
boring.
to have the different stuff.
Yep. So that's it. Thanks as always, and we'll see you guys out there on the slopes.
Bye.